I am 6 months pregnant, and my estranged parents are suddenly demanding access to my baby. My husband and I have been married for 4 years, and we recently moved back to my hometown because of his job transfer. I seriously never thought I'd be back here, but the housing market in this area was too good to pass up. Some background. I left home when I was 16 and went to live with my grandparents after years of my parents choosing my sister's best friend over me. I know that sounds weird, but they truly did. When I was 12, my sister's best friend Amber moved in with us because her parents were having financial troubles. What should have been a temporary situation turned into years for me. Amber was a textbook bully to me, but in that subtle, psychological way that's hard to prove to adults. She'd accidentally delete my school projects, hide my belongings, spread rumors about me at school, and convince my parents I was lying whenever I tried to tell them what was happening. My parents always took her side. Still makes my blood boil thinking about it. They'd say things like, "You need to be more understanding of Amber's situation," or "You're just jealous that your sister has such a close friend." I wasn't jealous. I was being tormented in my own home. The breaking point came when I was 16. Amber accidentally pushed me down the stairs, and I ended up with bruises all over my side. My parents dismissed it as teenage clumsiness, even though I told them exactly what happened. My grandmother saw the bruises when I was changing at her house the next weekend and immediately knew something was wrong. After I broke down and told her everything, she and my grandfather insisted I come live with them. My parents barely put up a fight. That should tell you everything. Fast forward 10 years. I haven't spoken to my parents or sister since. My grandparents have been my real parents in every way that matters. They came to my college graduation, walked me down the aisle at my wedding, and have been excited about becoming great-grandparents. My husband and I bought a charming older home here that needs quite a bit of work. We're kind of house poor right now, if that makes sense. We're currently saving every penny for baby expenses and medical costs because American healthcare is challenging. The nursery is half painted, and we still need to replace some old wiring in that room. But we're getting there. Yesterday, I got a text message from my mother congratulating me on my pregnancy and asking to meet for coffee. I saw her name pop up. I haven't heard from this woman in a decade, and suddenly she's acting like we just had some minor disagreement last week. After some digging and a panicked call to my cousin, I discovered that my cousin had shared my ultrasound photos on her social media, completely forgetting that she's still connected with some extended family who talked to my parents. So that's how they found out. My husband came home from work to find me still staring at the message, trying to process what to do. I showed him the text, and his face went through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. Have you ever thought about reconciling with them? Especially now that we're starting our own family, he asked. It was an honest question. He's genuinely the most understanding person I've ever met, but it made all these memories come flooding back. Like when Amber deleted my final history project and I failed the class. My parents said I should have backed it up. Or when she convinced them I stole money from my mom's purse and I was grounded for a month, even though I kept telling them I didn't do it. They never believed me, not once. I couldn't stop the tears. Pregnancy hormones definitely aren't helping my emotional control. They chose a stranger over their own daughter, I told him. They let her hurt me for years and called me a liar when I asked for help. He just held me while I shook and told me he'd support whatever decision I made. That's the kind of parent I want to be, someone who protects their child no matter what, not someone who abandons them. I finally replied with a brief message. I'm not interested in reconnecting. Please don't contact me again. Direct and to the point. Within minutes, my phone started receiving a lot of calls. First my mother calling, then my father, then even my sister, who I haven't spoken to since I was 16 either. I didn't answer any of them. Then the texts started coming in about how family is everything, and how the baby deserves to know all of its grandparents, and how the past is the past. Edit. Forgot to mention that Amber apparently hasn't been in their lives for years now, according to one of the texts my mom sent. As if that somehow erases what happened and makes everything okay. My mother even had the audacity to text that she's already buying baby things and setting up a nursery at their house. A nursery. For a grandchild she has no relationship with, born to a daughter she abandoned. The entitlement is staggering. Part of me wonders if I'm being unreasonable. Childhood trauma has a way of making you constantly second-guess yourself. Maybe people do change. Maybe holding on to this pain is only hurting me. But then I remember that in 10 years, they never once tried to contact me to apologize or make amends. Not when I graduated college, not when I got married, not during any holiday or birthday. Only now, when there's a baby involved, something they can show off to their friends, do they suddenly care about reconnecting. I've been talking to my therapist about this, thank God for therapy, and she reminded me that forgiveness doesn't have to mean letting toxic people back into my life. I can forgive them for my own peace without giving them access to hurt me or my child again. My husband says he'll back me either way, but this needs to be my decision since they're my parents. My grandparents, who are in their 70s now, say I don't owe my parents anything, especially not access to my baby. I just don't want my child to have conditional grandparents who only show love when it's convenient for them. I grew up feeling like I wasn't worth protecting, and I'll be damned if my baby ever feels that way for even a second. I honestly never imagined being in this position. Pregnant, back in my hometown, and dealing with the issues of my past all at once. I'm trying to stay calm for the baby's sake, but the stress of this situation, plus the house renovations, plus normal pregnancy worries, is really getting to me. Thanks for reading this far if you did. Any thoughts from people who've been in similar estrangement situations would be appreciated. Now for the first update. Wow, I didn't expect my post to blow up like this. Rip my inbox, seriously. So many of you suggested I have a direct conversation with my parents about boundaries, and well, that happened sooner than I expected. It's been 2 weeks since I sent that text telling my mother I wasn't interested in reconnecting. Apparently, they took that as some kind of challenge rather than a boundary, because of course they did. The messages have been non-stop. Daily texts about family healing, emails with links to articles about the importance of grandparents, and even flowers delivered to my workplace with notes about meeting their grandchild. How they found out where I work is a whole other issue that's making me seriously uncomfortable. For those wondering about our living situation, many of you asked about the half-painted nursery. We're actually staying with my grandparents temporarily while the more serious renovations are happening at our house. The electrical issues turned out to be worse than we thought, and it wasn't safe for me to be around all the construction dust in my condition. My grandparents have been absolute saints about the whole thing. Yesterday, things reached a whole new level of boundary stomping. I had just gotten back from a prenatal appointment. Everything's looking good with baby. Thanks for all the well wishes. When I pulled up to my grandparents' house and saw my parents' car parked outside, I literally just sat in my car for 5 minutes, trying to process what was happening. I called my husband, who immediately offered to leave work and come straight there. But I decided I needed to handle this myself, though in retrospect, maybe some backup would have been nice. After taking some deep breaths, I walked inside to find my grandmother in her armchair while my parents were on the sofa. There was an untouched tea tray between them. My mother immediately stood up when she saw me, moving toward me with outstretched arms and tears in her eyes. "My baby, look at you. You're glowing," she said. I instinctively stepped back and put a protective hand over my belly. I won't bore you with every detail of the conversation, though I remember every word. The highlights. They claim they've changed, that losing me made them realize their mistakes, and that Amber hasn't been in their lives for years now. My mother had the audacity to pull out her phone and show me photos of their home that they've redecorated as a grandparent's paradise with a nursery already set up. A whole nursery. For a grandchild they have no relationship with. They also mentioned several times how they want to help financially with the baby in our house, which felt manipulative given our current money situation. When I asked point blank why they suddenly cared after 10 years of radio silence, my mother got teary and said they respected my space. But now that there's a grandchild, family should be together. To those commenters who predicted they only cared about having access to the baby, not rebuilding our relationship, you were spot on. My grandmother finally interrupted to firmly tell them that I had made my wishes clear and they should leave. She reminded them how they failed to protect me once before, and my father got defensive, claiming they were in an impossible situation with Amber's family problems and they were trying to help everyone. Funny how everyone didn't include their own daughter, right? Before leaving, my mother placed a wrapped gift on the table, a silver baby rattle engraved with "beloved grandchild," and said they'll be patient but won't give up on family. The moment they left, I completely broke down. My grandmother just held me while I cried, not saying anything, just being there. I've been thinking about what many of you said in the comments about forgiveness not meaning reconciliation. I'm trying to process whether maintaining these boundaries is truly what's best for my child. Part of me wonders if I'm denying my baby connections to family members who might have changed. But then I remember how quickly my father became defensive when challenged, and I worry nothing has really changed at all. The most confusing part is that some things they said actually landed. When my mother mentioned that they've set up college funds for the baby, I caught myself thinking about our financial struggles with the house renovations and medical bills. We're doing okay, but just okay. American healthcare, am I right? For a split second, I pictured what it would be like to have that financial safety net for my child. But then I remembered what so many of you pointed out. If they were truly sorry, they would have tried to make amends long before a grandchild was in the picture. They had 10 years to reach out, apologize, and work on our relationship. They chose not to until there was something they wanted. My husband has been incredible through all this. Shout out to the commenters who said supportive partners are worth their weight in gold. You're absolutely right. When I told him everything that happened, he just listened, then asked what I needed from him. No pressure, no opinions pushed on me, just support. My grandparents are firmly in the "you don't owe them anything" camp. My grandmother actually threw the baby rattle gift in a drawer and said, "That can stay there until you decide what to do with it. No pressure either way." Have I mentioned how much I love this woman? I have another therapy session tomorrow, scheduled it as an emergency after this whole event. My therapist suggested I write down exactly what kind of relationship, if any, I might want with my parents and what non-negotiable boundaries would need to be in place. She says this will help me feel more in control of the situation rather than just reacting to their actions. Edit. To clarify, when my parents mentioned Amber hasn't been in their lives for years, I later asked my grandmother about this. Apparently, there was some falling out between them around 5 years ago, so they still maintained a relationship with her for 5 years after I left. That detail just makes their sudden desire for family unity seem even more hollow. I'm still sorting through all these complicated feelings. Pregnancy hormones definitely aren't helping with emotional clarity. Thank you to everyone who shared similar experiences with estranged parents. Knowing I'm not alone in this struggle has been more comforting than you can imagine. I've saved some of your comments about setting healthy boundaries to read when I'm feeling uncertain. Your support means more than you know. Now for the second update. For those asking about my situation with my parents, things have taken several unexpected turns since my last update a month ago. I really appreciate all the comments and support from my previous posts, which got so many awards. I'm still getting Reddit notifications. Thank you all. It's been a month since my parents ambushed me at my grandparents' house, and in that time, we've finally moved into our actual house. The place is still a work in progress, but at least the bedroom and kitchen are functional. My husband and I spent a solid week just scrubbing everything down to make it somewhat livable. The nursery is still just an empty room, which stresses me out daily now that I'm hitting the 7-month mark. The pressure to reconcile with my parents has ramped up significantly. I've gotten texts from 3 aunts, 2 uncles, and even my old high school volleyball coach, what the actual heck, telling me I should forgive and forget since my parents seem genuinely remorseful and Amber is apparently ancient history. It seems like they're trying to influence the entire extended family. My phone buzzes constantly with people I haven't spoken to in years, suddenly having very strong opinions about my family choices. The strangest development came last week when I received a handwritten letter from my sister. We haven't spoken since I left home 10 years ago. She wrote an apology about how she should have stood up for me against Amber, but was too caught up in her own issues to realize how bad things were. She included her phone number and said she'd love to be part of her niece or nephew's life. I was still processing the letter when yesterday happened. I was home alone since my husband was at work. I just finished putting away some baby clothes my friend had given me when I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, but figured it might be a package delivery. Instead, there stood my mother with shopping bags. I nearly slammed the door right then, but honestly was too shocked to move. Her eyes scanned past me to take in the state of our entryway. Before I could say anything, she pushed past me into the house. "Oh, sweetie, this place needs work," she said, putting the bags down on our makeshift coffee table. "Your father and I would be happy to help financially. We can't have our grandchild coming home to a house under construction." I felt completely violated standing in my own hallway. She just wandered through the house, touching things. When I demanded to know how she found our address, she waved her hand dismissively and said someone from church had told her. Then she immediately switched topics and told me I looked too thin for being 7 months pregnant. The whole time she was pulling baby clothes and items out of her bags, arranging them on our sofa, all designer stuff that we could never afford. She pulled out her phone and started showing me recent family photos from some gathering. "Your sister is engaged now. Did you know that? She wants you at the wedding. Everyone misses you so much." This from a woman who didn't contact me once in 10 years until she found out I was pregnant. Then came the kicker. She pulled documents from her purse, saying she'd brought proof that Amber was truly gone from their lives. There were printed screenshots of old social media posts showing some falling out they'd had, and then she pulled out what looked like legal paperwork, a restraining order they'd apparently filed against Amber. I took the papers and immediately checked the date. It was filed nearly 7 years after I went to live with my grandparents. 7 years. So they maintained their relationship with Amber for years after choosing her over their daughter. When I pointed this out, my mother got defensive. We had obligations to Amber's family. It was complicated, but we eventually saw her true colors, and that should count for something. Count for what exactly? They're just realizing your perspective now. Just then, my husband came home from work early, thank God. He immediately sensed the tension and came to stand beside me. He didn't say anything, just put his hand on my shoulder. That small gesture gave me such strength. My mother gathered her things, saying I was being selfish by denying them the joy of being grandparents when they've admitted their mistakes and changed. She left the baby clothes on our sofa, despite me telling her 3 times to take them with her. After she left, I sat down and cried out of frustration. We ended up donating all the baby stuff to a women's shelter later that evening, though I kept the receipts she'd left in one bag. These items cost more than our monthly mortgage payment, which says everything about their priorities. This morning, I got a call from my boss asking if everything was okay with my pregnancy. Confused, I asked why he was asking. Turns out my mother had contacted him saying she needed emergency contact information for her high-risk pregnant daughter. I'm not even high risk. My pregnancy has been completely normal aside from the usual discomforts. I'm at my wit's end with these boundary violations. They've gone from texting to showing up unannounced to now contacting my workplace. It feels like they're trying to force their way back into my life by any means necessary, and it's making me anxious during a time when I'm supposed to be preparing for this baby. My husband wants to change our locks, even though they don't have keys, and install security cameras. Part of me thinks that's overreacting, but another part remembers how my parents never respected my boundaries as a kid. The restraining order situation just confirms they still misunderstand what constitutes loyalty and protection. I called my grandmother after my mother left, and she was furious on my behalf. She suggested we consult a lawyer about sending a cease and desist letter, which feels extreme, but may be necessary at this point. My therapist agrees that formal boundaries might be needed since informal ones aren't working. As for my sister's letter, I'm conflicted. Her apology seemed sincere, but I can't help wondering if she's just a way for my parents to get access to the baby. She's always been influenced by them, and the timing of her reaching out right after they found out about my pregnancy feels suspicious. Edit. Several people have messaged asking about my sister and if I responded to her. I haven't yet. I'm taking my time to process everything. Her letter did mention specific incidents where she saw Amber being cruel to me and expressed what seemed like genuine regret for not speaking up. She also included her email and said she'd respect whatever boundaries I set, including if I didn't want to respond at all. It feels different from my parents' approach, but I'm still wary. I've been rereading the comments from my previous post about maintaining boundaries while pregnant, and they've been really helpful, especially from those of you who went through similar situations. My husband has been researching options for additional home security, and we've got an appointment with a family lawyer next week to discuss our options if things continue to escalate. I feel like I'm living in a difficult family situation when all I want is to focus on bringing my baby into a peaceful home. More updates to come, unfortunately. Now for the final update. Looking back at my first post about my parents trying to force their way back into my life after 10 years of silence, I barely recognize myself. Well, buckle up, because here's how everything finally resolved after my last update. It's been about a month since my mom showed up unannounced at our house, and I'm now officially 8 months pregnant with a belly that makes renovating our fixer-upper nearly impossible. The situation with my parents went from bad to worse after my last post. Not only did my mother contact my workplace, but I've since discovered they've been telling everyone who will listen that I'm being hormonal and keeping their grandchild from them out of spite. My cousin called last week to give me a heads up that my parents have been showing up at family functions with actual photos of our house that they must have taken while driving by. They've been using these pictures to demonstrate how we're struggling and how they just want to help their poor daughter prepare for her baby. They conveniently leave out the whole "we chose her bully over her for years" part of the story. We had to put our remaining renovations on hold because I developed gestational hypertension and my doctor ordered me to take it easy. I'm now on early maternity leave and spending most days trying not to stress about the half-painted nursery and exposed wiring in the baby's room. My husband has been working overtime trying to finish things himself on evenings and weekends. The real game changer came 3 days ago when I got an email from my sister. Remember how I mentioned she'd sent me that apology letter? Well, this email was something else entirely. She had attached screenshots of conversations between our parents and Amber from years ago that she'd found saved on an old laptop. My sister explained that she'd been cleaning out their attic and found the laptop with these email exchanges. There were messages where my mom told Amber that I was always too sensitive and probably making up stories for attention when I reported the bullying. There was one from my dad saying they were handling it, but that I needed to toughen up a bit. The worst was an email where they actually apologized to Amber after my grandma intervened, saying they were sorry for the drama I caused. These emails were from right before I moved in with my grandparents. I was still processing these revelations when there was a knock at our door yesterday afternoon. I'd just gotten back from a stressful doctor's appointment where they'd monitored my blood pressure. I opened the door to find both my parents standing there with my aunt. My aunt immediately looked confused and then horrified. "I thought this meeting was arranged," she said, looking between me and my parents. "They said you'd agreed to sit down and talk things through." My parents had basically tricked her into coming as some kind of mediator or buffer. Before I could respond, my dad stepped forward and said, "We're done with these childish games. We have a right to be part of our grandchild's life, and we're prepared to look into grandparents' rights if necessary." I should have been upset, but honestly, I felt calm. Maybe it was the clarity of finally seeing their true colors through my sister's email. I invited them into our living room where my husband was reviewing medical bills. I had my laptop right there, so I pulled up my sister's email and turned it toward them. "Before we discuss grandparents' rights, I'd like you to explain these," I said. They saw the screenshots. My dad tried to dismiss it all as things said in frustration a long time ago, but my mother immediately tried changing the subject, commenting on the unfinished state of our home and offering yet again to pay for the remaining renovations for the baby's sake. My husband had been quiet throughout all this, but he finally spoke up. "I'm curious," he said. "If you truly recognize your mistakes, why did you wait until there was a grandchild involved to seek reconciliation? Your daughter has been an adult for a decade." The silence that followed. My mother started fidgeting with her purse strap. After a while, she finally mumbled something about their friends showing off grandchildren for years and how they were tired of having nothing to contribute to those conversations. Then she added that it doesn't look right to have a grandchild they've never met. And there it was. The truth I'd suspected all along but couldn't quite name. This wasn't about love or remorse or even family. It was about appearances, about what they thought they were entitled to as grandparents, about how it looked to their friends that they'd been estranged from their daughter for a decade. I looked at my husband and turned to my parents. "You lost the right to be in my life when you failed to protect me as a child," I said. and you've lost any chance of knowing my child by showing that your motivations remain exactly the same as they were 10 years ago, entirely self-centered. My aunt stood up and said she was leaving and taking my parents with her. She hugged me and whispered that she was proud of me. After they left, I realized that holding this boundary wasn't about punishment or grudges. It was about protecting my child from the conditional love I experienced. My husband held my hand as we felt the baby kick, a reminder of the family we're creating based on something better. That night, I sent my sister a text thanking her for those screenshots and asking if she wanted to get coffee sometime. She responded almost immediately, saying yes, and apologized again for her part in everything that happened. We're meeting next week at a cafe near the hospital. My grandmother came over the next day with homemade lasagna and helped my husband put the finishing touches on the nursery. She didn't ask about what happened with my parents. She didn't need to. She just hugged me and said, "Your grandfather would be so proud of the woman you've become." That meant more than anything. Edit. So many people have asked about the grandparents' rights threat. We consulted with our lawyer friend who assured us they have absolutely no case. In our state, grandparents who have had no relationship with the child and whose own child, me, is not permitting contact have essentially zero legal standing. The threat was empty, just like most things they say. Our lawyer friend helped us draft a formal cease and desist letter anyway, just to have documentation in case things escalate further. I'm officially going full no contact and focusing on keeping my blood pressure down for these last few weeks of pregnancy. My husband installed security cameras, and we've let our neighbors know not to give any information to my parents if they come around asking questions. I'm finally at peace with everything that happened with my parents. Their actions showed me exactly who they are, and I'm choosing to build something better for my child. Thank you all for being part of my journey and helping me find my voice through this difficult time.